And you're sitting here talking to all these white people, because that crowd is mostly white.
Yeah.
And you have a power.
Yeah.
You're actually telling white people while you're in real time that they are not only losers, right? They didn't build any good any countries. I hate all your systems.
Wait, but my favorite part is when I see liberal.
I mean, I hate everything about you. You guys suck, and everything, and they're all like.
My favorite part is when I see liberal white people like, yes, we are racist. I knew it.
My ancestors. I wish we would have picked our own damn cotton.
I'm like, white people, stop clapping for this crap. This is so
stop
stupid.
it. It's a grift. It's
Hi everybody, welcome back to our channel. We got sent a couple of clips from Oxford University, I think is what it is. The first one's going to be David Webb talking about systemic racism in America. He does not, like we don't, believe that there is systemic racism or institutionalized racism in America. And we'll hear what he has to say.
It is a more than interesting proposition that America is institutionally racist. And before I address the narrative, the emotion, the misconceptions, the misused facts or badly applied facts that have been put out here tonight, I'd like to start with a simple quote. There is a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. There is a certain class of race problem solvers who don't want the patient to get well. That was said by Booker T. Washington. This is an esteemed body, one that sponsors and invites debate. Yet just an hour or so ago, someone who was invited to this body to test his mettle, a chief person to the right hand of Barack Obama, to the right hand of Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York, to, in many ways, as he puts it, the right side of the blacks in America, Al Sharpton, accepted and then refused to come and debate for this body. Attorney General Eric Holder, Attorney General of the United States, said that America is a nation of cowards when it comes to race. In fact, what we stand here and do today, and what someone like Al Sharpton does not do, shows that the cowardice lies with those who would push a narrative, demand retribution when none is required, but do not show up to face the public, either those who support them or detractors. Why is that important to what we do here today? It has been said before, but I will repeat it. The proposition that America is institutionally racist requires that something creates an environment. Two things create an environment for slavery or racism, and they are needed for it to exist. One is a social contract, as in the South during slavery. Two, codified law. Neither of those things exist in American culture today. And in fact, if they did exist as such, then the UK would also be guilty of same. The British Social Attitudes Survey of 2001, 25% of Brits are very or little prejudiced against people of other races. In 2013, 30% of Brits are very little prejudiced against people of other races. I also reject that because it is a survey. It is a poll. It is not a reflection of the British community, nor is it a reflection of the American community. The issues of racism and prejudice will always exist. That is something we can state honestly and factually. It is how we get to the solutions that matter. Abraham Lincoln, as my colleague said, fought a war to preserve the Union. That republic allowed for the people of the United States, under our Constitution, to amend it, therefore removing slavery, and then moving forward to the Voting and Civil Rights Act, and also the suffrage movement for women. These are great acts in our society. The issues that plague blacks in America, or anyone who is disadvantaged, have too many factors for me to address in 8 minutes or 8 hours.
When he said that racism, we obviously it exists and it's never going to go away. I agree with that, because a lot of times people say to us, you guys are acting like racism never existed, and since I feel like you guys are like pushing that idea, and I'm like, no one ever. We never said that racism doesn't exist. We never said that it doesn't happen. What we're saying is it's not prevalent in today's society.
I've always said that racism exists.
Always.
On both black and white people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Asian people are racist. Mm-hmm. Asian people can be racist. Hispanic people can be racist. Black people can be racist. Mm-hmm. And white people. But you can't erase ignorance.
Mm-mm. No.
Entirety. In its entirety. You can't do it. The things that matter the most are laws that keep you from doing what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And there are no laws that keep us from doing what we want to do. Mm-hmm. So that's the way someone else feels is their right.
Yeah, right.
You're not the feelings police. You don't get to be a thought police mm-hmm. on people. You don't get to police people's thoughts. Mm-hmm. They have the right to feel however they want to feel, as long as it doesn't bother someone's personal life. You can hate white people mm-hmm. as long as you don't harm white people.
Right.
You can hate black people as long as you don't harm black people. But if there's like a law that says, which is what slavery was, that mm-hmm. said these certain black people, because all black people weren't slaves.
Yeah.
But these certain black people are not allowed to have rights.
So
that's wrong.
Yeah, when it's built into law, that's when it's systemic. This mm-hmm. is the thing I think that a lot of black people that are not that they don't want to pull away from this idea of systemic racism and institutionalized racism. Mm-hmm. The part that you're messing up on and you're not getting or you're not grasping is that in order for it to actually be systemic, is that it has to be built into law. So what people say, what a lot of people, when naysayers will say, is that there's the phantom laws, right? The laws that are unspoken rules that no one talks mm-hmm. about. It's being systemic racism happening, but it's like under the radar type of systemic racism. I'm like, no, look, we're not playing phantom here, okay? Mm-hmm. If it's not built into law, then it's not systemic racism. That's just how it is. Jim Crow has some built-in laws. Obviously, back then there was systemic racism. Slavery, systemic racism. Okay, that was true then. Mm-hmm. It is not true now.
But in Jim Crow, we were more successful.
I know, think about that.
So how systemic was it?
Facts.
But in our society, we continue to address them with actions, not with narrative, not with conspiracy theories about DEA creating drugs, or not with conspiracy theories about agencies forming groups to go after blacks in some way. There are many examples I can counter. One, by the way, by one of the speakers, just for a point of information, George Zimmerman was not a police officer, therefore you should use a better example. Using wrong examples to present an argument leads us nowhere forward. I understand the emotion and I respect my opposition, but when you go into the areas of making false charges and living in the past, you do not address the issues of the present. In the present, and factually so, and you can do the research regardless, this is not a political issue, it is not a one or the other issue, it is a very complex, nuanced issue. If you find in your heart that America is not advanced as a nation, then you must accept that Britain is not advanced as a nation, that all of the world in the first world is not advanced in any manner. Therefore, you must accept that all is static and societies never change for the better or the worse. To anyone who believes that America is institutionally racist, I'll challenge you to do this. Go into communities and deal with problems by examining the roots of those problems, the foundations. The foundation of many problems starts with the individual, and there are factors. There are factors of education. It is right to say that there are disadvantaged people in America. 13% of the population is black, 17% Hispanic, majority white, and mixed other race, Asian at 3%. But when you take a look at the problem, you must address the foundation and the factors. Education, a family structure. In the 1960s, 80+% of blacks were two-parent homes. Today, that is reversed completely the other way. It has a lot of factors, which includes entitlement systems, the growth of liberalism to a point of progressivism beyond any imagined course. Education comes from a strong or blended family unit. That is your best path to success. And when it comes to single parentage of anyone of any ethnicity, a single mother has a higher likelihood, significantly, of being in poverty, therefore raising a child in poverty. I'm addressing foundation because it is easy to argue, as my colleagues have, the emotion, the misapplication of facts, and the narratives. But if we do not address the foundation of a problem, and we have in America, we will not advance as a society. And to correct a misspeak by my colleague Charlie Wolf, he tried to correct himself in amongst the cheers and the jeers. He meant to say America is not perfect, but working towards a more perfect union. And that is something we can all take as human beings. Look for solutions. Do not fall into false claims. Do not follow charlatans. Do not follow shakedown artists who want to draw you into arguments rather than have true debate on substance. And that is what we're here to do. I thank you for the invitation. I thank you for having me. And I want to leave you with this thought. We talk about skin color. Our skin is an organ. It does not think, it does not formulate ideas. It is merely the genetic result of our parents. Our ability to use our brain and reason in a free society, such as in America, is why we have overturned the blight and the negative aftermath of racism that began with colonial slavery. America is a land of opportunity, as promised in our Declaration of Independence, and preserved legally in our Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We have amended our Constitution, and we have evolved as a nation. Our people stand proud to support and defend opportunity and freedom for all. Thank you, President Whedon. Thank you to the members of this body, my colleagues, and my opposition.
When he talks about the factors that come into how you're raised, when we talk about just like why Black people are talking about this kind of oppression thing we've been talking about for a while now, and believing in this whole systemic racism thing and kind of buying into that. A lot of the people that are buying into that are not factoring in a lot of things. We talk a lot about single motherhood and the character of the Black community as a whole. And I feel like the character of the Black community, obviously when I say this, I'm not saying all, I hope we all understand that, I'm saying most. The character is down in the Black community, the morale is down in the Black community, the spirituality is down in the Black community. I'm saying all this because this is factoring in to why we are the way we are. And why we have this kind of mentality of, woe is me kind of feeling, everybody's, all the white man's against us, mentality. It's the character is what we kind of want to get to. Like when my sister and I talk about this a lot, we do speak on character integrity and things like that because it plays a huge part in why we are the way we are.
Yeah. I think also feminism. I mean, people really, especially when it comes to the Black community, feminism, Black women take feminism lock, stock, and barrel. when you have a high number of single mothers that, like you said, is completely the opposite. I mean, at almost 74%, black mothers are single. That also brings in the issue of feminism. Because feminism, a lot of women that are getting divorced are the educated, these overeducated women. And I think a lot of black women, particularly in the 80s, thought they were all going to be Claire Huxtable, be married to this man who also, you know, made this money, and you guys, we lived out this Cosby Show sort of thing. But there's a personality that goes along with a woman like Claire Huxtable, where she can no longer submit to her husband because she's an equal. Therefore, the structure, the family structure is off, and those women have the highest number of divorces in America. So even if you do get married, you're not going to probably stay married, which also creates, you know, single mothers.
Right.
We also have a problem with the things that we ingest. When there's no father in the home, kids become, the father becomes the people they watch on TV or the people in their neighborhood. And if the neighborhood is riddled with single mothers, then little boys are taking their cues from men that are in the neighborhood.
Neighborhood
that are also not married. You know, or they're watching some guy on television that's a rapper or something that's also treating women like crap. Or then he gets to look at women that act like crap. It really has little to do with the white man. It has a lot to do with our own character and the way that we look at the family structure. When you talk about years like the Jim Crow era, which most these people, especially college kids who talk about this, didn't even live in that era. I didn't live in that era. You know what I mean? But if we were much more successful in that era when we had the odds against us. Now it's all off. We can get jobs for being black,
which is really interesting. That's what makes it interesting to me about when people talk about systemic racism, because when there actually was systemic racism in America, how is it that in the Jim Crow time and that period of time, how is it that black people were reaching goals and they were succeeding far past a lot of even white people at that time? You know, they kind of had their eyes on their own paper, just doing their thing, getting things done, achieving, growing, you know. And so when I hear someone today say, oh, you know, the system is rigged against us, when I hear this, I'm like, no, but look, I'm like, okay, just for sake of argument, let's go with what you're saying. Let's say that it is rigged against you. Again, I ask you, how is it that a group of people, a community of people back in the Jim Crow era could achieve with this system being rigged against them, literally being rigged against them, right? How is it that they were able to achieve, even though the system was rigged against them? Yet today, the system is not rigged against us, but we're not achieving. This is a character problem.
Even in those days, white people had it harder.
Yes, they did.
Because we didn't have all this technology.
No.
So when life was tougher for both men and women, we had better families, we had more faith, and we had more individual businesses. People didn't rely on the government as much. But when things got easier, when technology came, when we all had our civil rights and everything's going well, women can, you know, outperform men and they make it so you can outperform men in businesses, then we became weaker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even in your individual life, when your life is harder, you become tougher.
Yes.
And what's happened is our lives have become so easier. And so now all we do is complain.
We have
a lot of time to complain.
We're privileged now more than ever. And I think that we have a lot of conveniences. And I like, as to the point you're making, is that all of these conveniences have made us even more weak.
But the sexual revolution also ruined the black community as well. It ruined almost every community. But since we're talking about black issues, it isn't just the white man. It's the fact that we allowed, in the late 60s, we allowed the whole sexual revolution. We're just like men. Let's start with the birth control and then end up being, we end up doing abortion and all of those things. Because before all of these things, before all the birth control and abortion came along, women had to actually be very choosy about who they slept with. Therefore, they actually had a good husband because, first of all, they got married young. And second of all, because they weren't sleeping around. Their minds were not focused on sex. It was focused on who's going to be a good father for my kids, who's going to be able to support and protect a family.
Well,
That's how they looked at it. Now, because women work and because there's birth control and abortion, we have completely let go of our morals because of it. But it's also caused, the irony is that all this abortion and sex education in school didn't do anything but cause single motherhood.
Yeah.
Just overbearing, overeducated women who think they know more than everybody, who they don't want to get married. If they get married, they get divorced because they think they know more than their husband. You know what I mean? Then we've got men, because of this, who have become completely they've just let go of their masculinity and allowed women to just control them sexually. So we have there's a lot of factors that have created, it's not just white people. That's the thing is when people always say, oh, well, look what white people have done to me. No, we have done a lot of things on our own. With LBJ's, civil rights bill and his war on poverty, that was our choice to be on welfare. If I can only be a little annoyed with LBJ for that, but the truth is that if welfare is presented to you and then you take it, that's your choice. That's like when they talk about the AIDS. Oh, they dropped drugs in the black community. You took the drugs. I don't understand. If I saw drugs today, I wouldn't be moved to take it.
Well, so the question becomes, where is the responsibility? Where's the self-control? Where's the self-awareness? Where's the self-esteem? Where is it? Because if the government is dropping drugs in your community, again, you're making a choice to take the drugs. But then you blame the white man for allegedly dropping the drugs. But you're still making the choice to do it.
When I say I have freedom, it's because I have agency.
Yeah.
I have agency. I don't sleep around. I don't do drugs. I don't spend all my money. I don't. This is what freedom is. Freedom is responsibility.
Yeah. Blaming this all on the government, I mean, you guys, that's such a big, ridiculous cop-out. Now, real quick, the next clip that was sent to us is the woman who was raising her hand because she wanted to interject Mr. Webb. She actually spoke. She got her chance to speak. And so we're going to look at that clip now of her rebuttal to what he's saying.
What I always find really interesting about arguments about institutional racism, which come from a place of pretending to care about racism, is that when they talk about holding hands and moving on into the utopia in the future, it takes a lot of privilege to be able to talk about that. It takes a lot of privilege to be able to ignore the reality of what it's like to be a black person, a Hispanic person, a Native American person in the United States today. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. There are more black men in prison today than there were enslaved in 1850 in the US. And that's because the project of white supremacy reproduces itself and finds new form in a way that becomes palatable to society. I've been thinking a lot about racism lately, about how nobody wants to be called a racist, but racism somehow just seems to exist, but no one's racist, right? And I think that gets to the heart of what I want to talk about today. White supremacy, particularly in the US, atomizes racism. It says, no, racism is something that individuals are, though those individuals reject the label. And then it denies that it's something that an institution can be. Institutions aren't people. Institutions exist as completely removed from time or any concept of interaction. Now I'm going to be outlining the racist logics which produce the racism that we see in American domestic and foreign policy today. But first, what I want to talk about is what I mean when I talk about white supremacy. Now we usually think of white supremacy as the KKK, as an ideology which promotes the subjugation of blacks. But the point is, white supremacy is a political ideology that perpetuates and maintains a system in which whites are able to gain social, political, economic dominance over others. And that doesn't have to be done in a malicious way. And this is the point, your intentions don't matter. Whether or not you intend to be racist doesn't make you not racist, right? So how will we win this debate today? We'll win by showing that the persistence of white supremacy in America produces institutions which systematically shut people of color out of economic, political, and social capital, right? So I'm going to talk about 3 points. My first point is that America was built on the exploitation of black labor, and that is incredibly significant in this debate. So Malcolm X says that African Americans didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on them. And the point is that for African Americans and for people of color in the US, they are primarily a question of foreign policy and not a question of domestic policy. They were shipped over to the US as as free labor, right? And so that exploitation represented a massive transfer of wealth from blacks in the US to whites in the US.
This is a slave trade. This is not a slave steal. This was a business. You know, and
everybody had their hands in those.
Everybody had it.
Everybody, Arabs, black people, white people, everybody had their hands into it. Black people sold their own people to the colonizers, and they went over in the boat and came over to the country and did free labor. But not every black person in America was a slave.
She's conveniently leaving out the important parts of this conversation, or she, as David Webb has pointed out, maybe she's just misinformed or uninformed. It could be both. I don't know, or she may just be conveniently leaving it out on purpose. But people, when they talk about the slave thing, the slave trade situation, they are not factoring in the fact that this started there, and it wasn't like white people went into Africa and started snatching up black people. No, this was a slave trade. That was the name of it. Transatlantic slave trade.
And black people in America end up owning slaves as well in America.
This is a business.
You know what I mean? It's a business.
It's not a good one.
And you would say it might not even have anything to do with color.
No.
It was just an easy,
trade.
It was a business.
It was a
free labor.
Yeah.
And slavery is an old business. It's been since biblical times.
Right.
People have been doing this business for a long time. There's more There's more slaves in Africa now. And in the world than there was during that time.
I'm just tired of having this conversation. I'm tired of having this debate, this kind of like talk about slavery and I hate when people don't bring up the full spectrum and the full picture of what happened there. It's like we start with just the white people snatched up black people, and then black people just got here because of the kidnapping white people. No. We're not. We have got to start talking about this in a real way, and we have to start telling the truth, the real truth of what happened with that business. By the way, business, and it's an unfortunate business when we don't tell the truth and we omit facts the way that she's doing. It's wrong. She's standing on a false premise right now. She's beginning her entire debate with that.
And also, the descendants of those American slaves benefited greatly.
Yes.
Because now all those Africans, the descendants of the Africans that got to stay in Africa are all trying to get over here or Europe. People in Africa, Asia, Arab countries are all trying to get to America or Europe.
Whether you don't like to hear that.
Whether you like it or not, they are all trying to get over here. The only people that don't like the nations, that don't like America and Europe, are the African and the African Americans or the black people that were born and raised there.
Yeah.
We take it for granted. We take it for granted our freedom.
Yeah.
However much we wax lyrical about having abolished slavery, that transfer of wealth hasn't found itself back in the pockets of people who worked for hours, no thank you, for hours and hours on cotton palms. So the first thing is that there was a direct link and a direct line between this transfer of wealth and the persistency of deprivation in black communities, in communities of color in the US. Because when the plantation owners lost their slaves, they didn't lose the money they earned from them, right? And the second point is that there's no break in the...
Because slavery was legal. That's why they didn't lose anything.
It's legal.
It was illegal. It was legal for them to own slaves. Black people own slaves in America too, so it was legal for them to own slaves. I know that you don't like the law, and that's why it was changed.
Yeah, it's bad law.
But they weren't doing anything illegal because that was a legal thing to do.
It's a business.
It's just a business.
It's a business.
And I know that sounds really bad, but that is what it was.
It's a pretty bad business, huh?
It's a business
that's why they stopped it. Right, but it was legal, ma'am.
Institutions which represent slavery, right? So the day after slavery was abolished, it wasn't the case that the courts which the day before were arbitrating cases on like property claims to black bodies changed significantly. No, they didn't. The law just changed, and that's going to be significant later on in my speech. So secondly, my point is that the United States plays a central role in the persistence of deprivation, not just in the United States, but in foreign territory as well. So Joe wants us to believe that like blacks are the authors of our own destiny. In the US, you are 3 times less likely to get called back for a job interview if you're somebody with a name which sounds black, right? if you're less likely to be carrying drugs in the US, but you're more than 10 times more likely to be stopped and searched. And the discrimination which we see in that sense produces the prison industrial complex, produces deprivation in black communities. So like, let's talk about the breakdown of black communities. We can talk about how the prison industrial complex, how the war on drugs has ripped apart families and communities, not just in America, but in Latin America, where the US organizes coups which displace and destabilize democratic countries. In the US, you have a 1 in 3 chance of serving time in prison before the age of 26 if you're black. That is ridiculous. The third point is on the violence of dehumanization and how the dispensability of black lives persists, and how that is how institutional racism persists. So like, we can talk about just blacks, but it's not about just black people, right? The war on terror has been used by the US government to systematically persecute, to torture, and to completely dehumanize people of color, particularly Muslims and particularly Arabs. It's been used to organize...
And they still want to come over here.
Right.
Those are people that we so-called made them, institutionally racist against Muslims. They still, in droves, want to come to Europe and America, and are. It didn't stop them from coming to this racist country.
That shows you how not prevalent racism is.
It's cap.
It's all cap.
It's all cap. Because what you're saying is, again, she's giving black people no agency. She's saying that black people aren't free. You're free when you take responsibility for your life. Anybody in America can be institutionally oppressed if you allow yourself to be chained to the government. That's white people too. If anybody can do that. But what your choices, you are a sum total of your choices. Everything that you do, everything I've done, everything Danielle's done, everything anybody's watching us is doing, you are a sum total of your choices.
Again, this white supremacy narrative that goes around with these liberal, college people or whatever in general is just a system utterly ridiculous. It's like the moment they mention the white supremacy part is the moment that I just fade away, because I'm like, so once again, here we have another black person saying that white people are superior over them. And we keep saying this about Vince Ellison is correct. No white person is superior over me. I would love to see that. And like he was saying, David was saying that people like her are coming from an emotional stand, and they all do. They come from this emotional stand when it comes to this white supremacy. They bring out the keywords, right? The white supremacy and the racism, systemic this and blah, and they don't have anything. They don't ground anything in fact.
The coups against democratically elected governments, but it's also the point is that beyond that, it's not just about the institutions themselves or what it's done. It's about the rhetoric which drives it, right? It's this rhetoric of dehumanization. It's really striking when you hear Darren Wilson talking about the day he shot Mike Brown. He talks about him as a devil. He says, if he punched me one more time, I thought I would have died. And the point is, that persistence of the idea of black people as being superhuman, of black people as being something to be feared, is something which drives police brutality in the US, because black men are more likely to be aggressive in the mind of white supremacy than anybody else.
Mike Brown went after the cop's gun. His DNA was all over his gun.
Fingerprints, all of it.
Sorry. And
no,
wrong again. The emotional story of what happened to him is sad. It's sad because he did something wrong and got himself killed. The same thing with George Floyd.
This is part we don't talk about because we don't want to talk about it. You know why we don't talk about it? Because the person is dead and it's sad, right? Because it's sad, but we have to talk about this in a real way. Mike Brown would not have been in a situation if he was not doing the things that he was doing prior. There would be no reason to stop him.
And by the way, when all of these black men that are unarmed get killed, you see a slew of black mothers. You don't see any fathers, rather, rarely. A sister and a mother, a grandmother and a mother. It's like, where are their fathers? Why aren't there ever any fathers around? Every once in a while, you see a sprinkle like, what's his name? Trayvon Martin's father.
Yeah. Are there incidences where there's black people who are, allegedly or whatever, not doing anything, and then something happens? Like, that happens?
Yeah.
What we do know is that black people are doing a lot of the crimes. It's true. The black people that are in prison today the majority, and when I say majority, I am talking about 80%, 90%. They're there for a reason. I don't care if it's a small thing, it's a criminal thing that they've done. It's unfortunate. I'm telling you this, but if we don't have the conversation in a real way, we're never going to get past any of this.
In the US, a black man is killed once every 28 hours by an armed vigilante or a police officer. That is ridiculous. And now the speaker before me wanted to talk about black culture, how much black culture contributed to how the US perceives of itself. It's ridiculous when you consider the fact that blacks have not reaped the rewards of their contributions to American culture. Elvis Presley reaped most of the rewards from rock and roll, which was built by black labor. And you see that continuation of cultural appropriation today. And so why is this? America, it's ridiculous to talk about this as if we're surprised, right? America is the product of a colonial project, right? It was one which sought to dominate the Americas along with the indigenous people. So why are we surprised when the African Americans are black before they're American? That the America who fears immigration is the same one which keeps the indigenous population in reservations, as if, and which speaks to founding fathers like Native Americans didn't exist before Columbus discovered America. The first death in the War of Independence was a black man fighting for the independence of America. Blacks so wanted to be accepted that they formed their own regiments and went out to war against the orders of whites. But what did they get in return? They got 3/5 a human. And it's really interesting because NRA fanatics talk about how guns don't kill people, people kill people. And do you know what? They're right? Because people create gun culture in America. People create racialized myths of history. And this is the point. When we talk about institutions, we're not talking about documents. Documents are separate from institutions. Institutions are how those documents interact with human beings. Institutions are people. The police can't be an institution separate from the acts of individual officers. And this is the point about atomizing racism. You have to understand how it works systemically. You have to understand how this rhetoric links up with these institutions, links up with those documents to produce a system which disproportionately victimizes people of color. And so it's really interesting that liberals come out and tote claims about freedom, but Mill says that institutions are shaped by people and not the other way around. And so when we're looking at this debate and we're weighing up this debate, we can't make that distinction between people and institutions. People are those institutions. Our society is these institutions. So when I'm talking about America being institutionally racist, I'm saying American society is racist. Thank you.
This woman
was a horrible.
That was embarrassing.
That was a horrible.
America.
That was a horrible speech.
She just said that.
She said, "Why are everybody clapping?"
She said America is just inherently racist. She said she's on it too. She's not even from America. She's on it too.
The 3/5 compromise is completely is completely.
That's misrepresented.
It's misrepresented because if it hadn't been for the 3/5 compromise, we would have slavery well into the 20th century.
If I can find Carolyn Swain explaining the 3/5 to understand a little better, it's been misrepresented for far too long.
One of the most misunderstood clauses in the United States Constitution is found in Article 1, Section 2. Representatives shall be apportioned among the states by adding to the whole number of free persons 3/5 of all other persons. Known as the 3/5 compromise, it raises an obvious question. How could the founding fathers who endorsed the idea that all men are created equal also endorse the idea that some men aren't? In 2013, James Wagner, president of Emory University, answered the question this way. The 3/5 compromise was an example of difficult but necessary political bargaining. Without it, Wagner argued, the northern and southern states would never have agreed to form a single union. No 3/5 compromise, no United States of America.
The North actually instituted that to help black people because the South was trying to use black people as property, but then use them as people to gain power.
Now, if that had not happened, then we would still be doing slavery.
She completely missed the mark on that one. Yeah, and most black people do.
Oh, I'm 3/5 a man.
That's not what they were saying.
That's not what it was saying. You guys are not doing your research. They're going to
how dare her pretend like she don't like Elvis?
Elvis. That's another thing.
I mean,
That's another thing.
Stop it.
That's another thing, though, is that why have we become a society where was that cultural appropriation is even a thing? Why has it become that? Because I can tell you, back in the day, that was looked at as flattery. That was an homage to a culture or to a race of people or a type of a genre of music. It was well accepted, as a cultural appreciation and not cultural appropriation.
Absolutely amazing to me how someone can sit here and just do a grift while she's sitting in a position of power. It's amazing. Anybody gave her a clap. You were standing here.
Yeah, it's a courtesy clap.
First, a woman, that's an impression.
Yeah.
That's also an impression, they say. A woman, a black woman.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting here talking to all these white people, because that crowd is mostly white.
Yeah.
And you have a power. Yeah. You're actually telling white people while you're in real time that they are not only losers, right? They didn't build any good any countries. I hate all your systems.
Wait, but my favorite part is when I see liberal.
I mean, I hate everything about you. You guys suck, and everything, and they're all like.
My favorite part is when I see liberal white people like, yes, we are racist. I knew
hate
it.
My ancestors. I wish we would have picked our own damn cotton.
I'm like, white people, stop clapping for this crap. This is so
stop
stupid.
it. It's a grift.
She wasn't even on target with what she was saying.
All of this stuff that's going on right now is all emotional female stuff.
It is.
All of what's wrong with America right now.
Emotional female stuff.
Everything from BLM, 3 black women, to feminism, women, and LGBT. Women vote for all this. Men vote for the bigger picture. And this is why men are supposed to be in charge. It has nothing to do with them being better than us or smarter than us. It's that men have a tendency to let emotion out of the situation for a minute, to look forward and see a bigger picture. Well, women are emotional. They stay in the moment and they vote on emotions and feelings. And look at our country.
To even prove that point is to just look at David and Annie, is her name?
Yeah.
These 2 people. So look at David's presentation. Logical, balanced, clear, decisive, calm.
You see how fidgety she was? And
shirts falling off.
What did I learn in my class in college? You know what I mean? This man David has lived life. This woman is young and she hasn't lived life yet, and she's pretending like she knows more than him. Yeah. And anybody, by the way, in our comments as black comes and starts trying to agree with this woman, I mean, literally, I reject everything you say. I'm gonna tell you that before you comment. I reject everything that you're going to say. Because you know darn good and well that you are very privileged to live in this country. You know darn good and well that people don't pull you over there and beat you down in the middle of the street.
It's not happening.
You know darn good and well that you probably have more of a chance to get a job than any white person, because DEI is a real thing and it's happening all over this country. So cut it out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Our neighborhoods are crap because we act like crap in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's what I keep saying. That's why we can keep saying that it's a character problem. We have a character problem in our community, and we're blaming it on white people.
They're gentrifying our neighborhoods, sense. But then when white people are in it, it's then white people leave. It's white flight.
Yeah, it's like God. We
can't be both.
Yeah. Well, it's accountability and responsibility of your own behavior. While we need to place more importance on talking about the structure of the family, the structure of having men be the patriarchy. That structure is very important to talk about. I'm telling you, it's more important than talking about racism. It just is.
It just is.
The top 10 list of things that are most important in the black community that we need to be focusing on, racism wouldn't even make the top 10 list for me. It wouldn't even make the list. We have so many other things going on that racism literally doesn't even make the list. So we need to start talking about what really matters.
It's the family structure. Yeah. Because as long as we keep accepting it and pretending like we're not free, it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. Let us know what you think, you guys. Leave some comments below. Do you agree with her? Do you agree with him? We'd love to hear it. That's it. We will see you guys in the next video.